not based on any one particular thing, more an accumulation of incidents that had alerted her to some underlying malaise that went beyond the norm. Sudden mood swings, outbursts of temper, tears. Several occasions on which he'd soiled himself in the playground, or once in class. An incident quite possibly misinterpreted between himself and the school secretary, when they'd been alone in her office, something vaguely sexual. Alice had read the reports, hummed and hawed, finally found a place in her schedule. Almost 5 years now since she had finished her training. 3 since taking up her post with this authority. The younger children, 7, 8, 9, she felt less anxious with, more in control. Boys like this, though, edging 11, slightly built, with something threatening about them nevertheless, something confrontational, beating just beneath the skin. Sensing the allotted time drawing to a close, Alice allowed herself to glance down at her watch, capped and uncapped her pen, then told herself not to fidget. A cup of tea and a biscuit. 2 more sessions, and then she was through. Another day. Tonight there was a Bunwell at the Film Society. Viridiana. Maybe she'd go along. Take her mind off work. Relax. "All right, then," Alice said as brightly as she could. "I'll see you again next week." Chapter 2. When Elder had first taken retirement and moved down to Cornwall, could that really be close to 4 years ago? One of the things he'd promised himself was that he'd learn the names of all the trees and flowers that grew close to wherever he set down roots. But high in the peninsula between Zennor and St. Ives, on a narrow strip of land between moor and sea, there were no trees, or precious few, and the flowers that pushed through hardily each spring remained for the most part anonymous. Red campion he knew, and foxglove, bluebell of course, and primrose, but little else. The pocket guide he'd picked up second-hand was tucked half-forgotten amongst the books that were crammed higgledy-piggledy along his shelves. This morning the sun was pale over the sea and smudged with grey inland, darkening over the old tin mines at Sperris Croft. The only sign of sun, a faint reddening blur around the hills to the southeast. On the radio the night before, the forecast had been for a dip in temperature by as much as 10 degrees, and over the higher ground, rare for April, a light fall of snow. Elder made coffee and toast, and hunkered down in the one comfortable chair with a book, The Fox in the Attic by Richard Hughes. The farm labourer's cottage he rented had lain empty for the best part of a year before he had moved in, its owner's plans to gentrify it for the holiday trade stalled amidst family recriminations and a shortage of cash. The stone walls, thick enough to withstand the wind, were still in places unplastered, and where plaster had been slapped haphazardly into place, it remained unpainted, taking on a pinkish hue that reminded Elder of faded marble. An oil-fired stove on which he cooked was the main source of heating, sufficient to the needs of someone living alone, as long as he was prepared to wear several layers of clothing through the winter and required no more than a single shallow bath a day. For the first 18 months, the radio had been his only link with the outside world. But then, under some pressure from his ex-wife Joanne and the few friends who insisted they wanted to stay in touch, he had a telephone installed. A landline, there being no signal for anything else. It scarcely ever rang. After the best part of an hour, Elder set aside his book, stretched, and stepped outside. Colder, yes, but not by that much. Perhaps the forecast had been wrong. 15 minutes later, boots laced, waterproofs fastened, woolen hat pulled down over his ears, he set out on a path that would take him through Nancledra, to the opposite coast, and within sight of St. Michael's Mount. Now in his 50s, Elder had chosen a lifestyle that kept him fit, at least. Returning that afternoon, fortified by a pasty from the baker's in Marazion, and the two